your experiences in relationship to the topic that we are discussing. And I would invite our audience, take good notes, because we have sufficient, I wouldn't say we have sufficient time, but we have good time to have a conversation. When you finish the first round, our audience might like to raise a few questions, depending on, I don't know how many questions might emerge. Then you have the opportunity to come back. You can add other elements you do not bring out in the first round, and you can also have the opportunity to respond to the issues that would be emerging. Is that okay to be able to start with? Great. So now I'm going to turn to you because the conversation, you are our key implementers. And so, Mr. Ofori Afrifa, let me turn to you and give you your first 5 minutes and invite you to share your thoughts.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good morning to everybody, especially our excellencies who are with us today. Yes, the issue of irregular migration, linking it to transnational crime and in a multipolar world, is a very interesting topic. We could have a whole week seminar on it. Now, when we talk about irregular migration, we need to understand what it means. At times we confuse that with illegal migration. Irregular migration just talks about people moving from one country to the other, or even, from one country to the other, not going by the set down regulations. It could be to many reasons. So, for example, when we say you are migrating, properly speaking, you'll be expected to go about your travel documents, conform with the travel regulations set by countries. If you require visas, you have to enter by the proper routes, etc. That we call legal or regular migration. But when you don't, then it becomes irregular. There are times we use the term illegal immigration. That we use them interchangeably, but when you use illegal immigration, then we impute crime to that movement. So we have to take note of it. So some forms of irregular migration, like we are linking it now, climate change. In our sub-region, the Sahel, we know, desertification is taking over. So we see a lot of movement, especially at certain times of the season. We are getting people from Niger, Mali, etc. I'll use Ghana as an example. These are countries that we've had traditional ties, historical. They've built home bases here. They have huge communities of Malians, Nigerians, etc. here. At certain seasons when it's dry, you see a huge movement down to come work, and when it is raining again, they go back. Most of these people come without documents, and they come through various routes. In fact, when we look back a bit, during the COVID time, we saw the magnitude of this movement because then the borders were closed, and we were putting very strict controls. Then we saw the movement. Then they had to come. We saw huge numbers, and we said, wow, this is a problem that we have to look at. And they are coming without documents. They are coming through various forms. Some are working, etc. And the vulnerabilities. Women and children involved in this. They are all moving. We have to take care of them. Now, when you look at these movements, especially in this time, when our region is experiencing terrorism, it puts us on a rather high alert. Things are happening across our borders in the north. And in the northern part of Ghana, for example, we are having issues with some communities. Yesterday, the Boko issue came up. The president talked about it in his State of the Nation address. That makes our stretch of that border very, very vulnerable. And you are seeing that anytime there's an attack, for example, across the borders in Burkina Faso, there's always a rush of people coming in seeking asylum. And then it is fluid. They can go back just within a few hours. But within those movements, there are serious risks. Because then we screen them and we find that some of them have links to terrorist organizations, some are carrying arms. So then we have to be careful about this movement. So the irregular migration that we talk about in West Africa, it comes with a lot of challenges, especially now when we talk about terrorism. We have to be very, very, very careful how we talk. And again, how do we deal with it? Irregular migration always poses a challenge to immigration controls, especially in our South region where ECOWAS protocols encourage freedom of movement. But the freedom of movement for people, you must be done in a certain way. You must come through the regular post and you must be documented. And these people come, you must receive them. Now, the situation of Niger, Burkina Faso, and I should say Mali, they opting out of ECOWAS. It posed another huge challenge to us. How do we deal with them? We have situations where some countries in West Africa had decided that then they would not allow them to move at all. But these people are moving. You find them at the border of a certain place, and they can't enter that country. We have to move them. So when these things are moving, then the criminals now begin to move in. That is when we have the transnational organized crime, especially the terrorism, and then the extremists. They import all sorts of things, and we have to deal with them. So I think that would be my initial take. We'll come to the specifics. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. You have brought home additional elements that should preoccupy us, particularly in the context of today, our response to violent extremism and terrorism, and how that further complicates your work. And I'm sure you are thinking about how the institutional capacity is also responding to these challenges. Without any further comment, let's turn to our brother from Nigeria, Dr. Chukwum Emeka, please.
Good morning, moderator. Good morning, Your Excellencies, colleagues in the migration business, very distinguished personalities that are here today. I see this as a wonderful opportunity given to us, to be part of this conversation. And honestly, I personally thank the Kofi Annan Center for finding it, bringing up this very interesting topic. It's actually trending, and it can't come at a better time. Yesterday, our leaders who were here, did a very, very robust conversation, and they educated us enough. Even my great-grandmother who didn't go to school, if she's here, if she were to be here, she will understand what migration is and the policies and challenges and all that. Having said that, I would want to lend some voices to my colleague and brother here to look at the conceptual definitions like migration. Though we have agreed, migration movement, it has been as old as man. Even animals migrate. You discover that, for instance, during the rainy season, some birds move from one place to the other. During the dry season, others move from this, from one area to the other. That is another type of migration. The farmer header crisis we're having in Nigeria, for instance, is related to this issue of climate change and an attempt, an existential survival. So the headers would want because of the desertification they are having over their place, they will want to move to places where they will have green grasses. So, and if these things are not done under some particular rules, regulations, and all that, it becomes an issue. Sometimes they enter into people's farms, and it brings a whole lot of challenges. So it will become some crises and things like that and all that. So migration has been, something that is as old as man. So whether this migration is regular or irregular is another issue. And like my colleague said, if you move from one place to the other as a human being without some sets meeting up some conditions of the receiving country, they look at it as irregular. So in such cases, irregular migration becomes an issue that is particularly defined to the third world countries, especially Africa, because the Englishman or the developed countries, they know how to move from one place to the other. They get prepared and all that and all that. But sometimes, because of war, because of some crises, because of desertifications and all that, people move. People are forced to move. So, and when you're forced to move, you move without getting prepared. So it becomes an issue. So I haven't said that. You discover also that we move sometimes because of certain needs. Others move for business. Others move for for labor purposes and all that. So when we look at migration, irregular migration, then transnational crime, then we tried to attempt what transnational crimes are. If we have conversation around transnational crime, you look at some of those crimes that may be processed in one country and transported to another country for execution. And you can get, very few examples like the production of illicit drug. It could be, take for instance, in country A. They may not be the consumers. They may not be the target audience. It will be processed in country B and taken to country D for consumption. So it becomes, an issue of, transnational. It passes from one country to another. Now, if you also look at trafficking in human beings or smuggling of human beings or trafficking in persons, the organizers are usually, across borders. The source country may just have, it may not be the users. Take, for instance, people who come to Nigeria to recruit human beings to travel, maybe to Europe, maybe to America, maybe to some even Asia and all that. They have what they call their madams or whatever, or they have their kingpins somewhere. But the people who are the catchers, what they call catchers, the people who are the catchers, are the locals. They catch and collect very little amount of money. And they collect very little amount of money and hand over to the next group. The next group, for instance, will also, so it's in chain. So it is also, if somebody could pass through 3-4 hands before you get to Dubai, for instance. So while I was commander, Lagos State Border Patrol, I intercepted and rescued 187 trafficked youths. They were just told stories and all that, and that they have a place they are going to. That's the highest scoop in one single in one single interception we have had since the inception of Nigeria Immigration Service. There are temptations. They have money. They have what it takes and all that. They will come and drop, reasonable amount of money, which they know you don't have as a public servant. So the temptations are there and things like that. So if you get compromised, those kids, those children will be gone forever. They could be used for organ harvesting. They could be used, for, some other, the forced labor and things like sex slaves and things and all that. So, what we are now saying, haven't attempted, a kind of conversation around these concepts. Let's look at, what are the causes of this. Our leaders yesterday agreed themselves that they have not done enough.
Did I hear you say they've not done enough?
Yeah, the leaders agreed yesterday that they've not done enough. That they have not done enough in terms of ensuring that, putting some we have some legal framework. We have rules and regulations. We are good in bringing up agreements and all that. But they also agreed that they've not done enough. The truth is that these people, we agreed also yesterday that part of the causes of illegal migration is the push and pull question. What are the push? What are the factors in the push? What are the elements in the pull? The push is that, for instance, if I have a job in Nigeria, for instance, I won't want to go to Dubai. If I have a good job in Nigeria, I won't be tempted with, look, come, if you go to this place, somebody will pay you this, somebody will pay you this. But when you have a whole lot of youths not doing anything and all that, they will be tempted to say, oh, let me go and try it out there. So if we create a congenial atmosphere back home, if we are capable to create some institutional frameworks that will give us the basics, because the Africans are not asking for so much. They are asking just for the basics. Good education, health, and all that. These are just basic. So if our leaders are not capable of allowing ourselves, allowing our kids and things like that to get the basics, then they will be pushed into irregular migration. Okay. Because for instance, I came to Ghana and I'm in Accra, have beautiful sceneries and all that. I would want to come again, though legitimate. But if I go back my place, and I'm giving an example with myself. Yeah. I've not seen, on the streets where people are carrying guns, trying to stop you. That's what happens in my place. So you see, there are a lot of things that, if somebody now decides to come to Ghana for his education, for one thing or the other, there is a better so-called greener pasture in this place, the person is, now pushed because the leaders have not done what they are supposed to do.
Okay. Are you going to hold on to that so that you have the opportunity to even buttress it more?
Okay, I'm sorry.
No. It's a conversation. I want to make sure that we are able to have the full complement. But the point is that you are raising very, very important issues. And I'm happy you are confronting them head on. And then we'll come on. I just want to make sure we hear the voices of our other panelists so that we can have the opportunity to come back. So please, my good friend, please go ahead. Director General, Gambia Immigration Department, Mr. Turi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Good morning, everybody. Before I start my presentation, I first and foremost want to recognize the presence of my former Vice President in the person of Madam Fatmata Jallow Tambajang. This is the woman who has championed democracy in my country immediately after the fall of the then dictator, Mr. Yahya Jammeh. After her ascension to the prestigious position of Vice President, she immediately rolled out the security sector reform, which has gone a very long way in professionalizing the various security establishments of my country. Madam, thank you very much. We are appreciative. I want to slightly deviate because yesterday we've heard about the root causes of illegal migration. We've also heard about policies, laws, and guidelines. My own take is I want to talk about what are the challenges that we are confronted with as an institution. At the same time, possibly come up with areas that I think are the best way to mitigate some of those challenges. Irregular migration, otherwise known as clandestine movement in my country, is a phenomena that has hit tiny Gambia very, very hard. If you check the statistics of Gambians that are either going through the Canary Island or the Atlantic going through Canary Island or using the central Mediterranean route by way of going to Mali, Niger Republic, and then to Tunis or Libya, and then cross over the Mediterranean to Italy. The numbers are on a very high side. Now, what are we doing as a nation in order to be able to minimize? Because to completely eradicate it is sincerely a very big challenge for us. Why is it a challenge? We all know in Africa we have weak border management systems, and at the same time, the activities of unscrupulous traffickers is equally posing as a challenge. Now, what do we normally do? We come up with very robust and vigorous border patrols. These border patrols, are joint patrols which have the presence of all security institutions, all the stakeholders as far as, integrated border management and control is concerned. We are also in the process of having what we call smuggling of migrants bill. In the Gambia, we have trafficking in persons law, but in smuggling of migrants, we are yet to have that one. However, the process is at a very advanced stage. When I was coming, I think the level it is, it has to go to cabinet, and then from cabinet, it go to parliament, and we are optimistic that it will sail through the process. So what do we do in order to be able to prosecute, these traffickers? We always refer ourselves to the Immigration Act because illegal entry is an offense. At the same time, also, we use the Trafficking Act because most of the traffickers, when you look at what they do, all elements of trafficking constitute, their actions. So when we use the Trafficking Act, it's very easy, to prosecute them. Last year, 2023 alone, we were able to have 29 interceptions, and out of these 29, we successfully prosecute, 20 out of them, various degree of jail terms that the traffickers, got on the courts. One way also to mitigate, irregular migration is to have very good systems at our borders. Back home in the Gambia, we were able to have migration information data analysis system called the MIDAS. This is a software that was developed and owned by IOM. We are able to install it, in 7 of our strategic border entry points. This is a system which has the capacity of collecting, storing, analyzing, and processing traveler information in real time, while at the same time also it can provide sound statistical data to inform migration policy issues to central government. Travel documents, as alluded to by Mr. Afrifa, are scanned under very sophisticated UV lights, and then any document that to check their authenticity, of course, any document that is not considered to be a genuine one is constitute an immigration offense as well. So these are also systems that we are using. At the same time also, we have what we call interagency border monitoring teams. This interagency comprises of all stakeholders at the borders. You talk of the immigration, you talk of the customs, you talk of the police, you talk of the agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture, animal and plant quarantine, you talk of drug law enforcement. It also might interest you to know that 3 sides of Gambia is bordering Senegal. It is only the fourth opening, which is the Atlantic Ocean. And by way of, having that cultural affinity between us, the Gambia and Senegal are the same people. The only difference that we have is the official language. Their own is French, while we are English speaking. So we also encourage, to have that, dialogue, with our colleagues from the other side of the border. So periodically, we do have what we call, joint border meetings with our Senegalese counterparts. This is also giving us very good, positive results, and the dividends are really good because, border management and control, most of the problems, are very easy to tackle, when there is that common understanding between various security officials operating at the border. Now, Dr. Dike talked about the ECOWAS protocol, which is also a very big challenge for us because we all know movement of persons and goods is one protocol of ECOWAS. At the same time, right to enter, right to reside, and right to establish. Now, if a citizen of a member state comes to the border and then wants to enter the Gambia and all the travel documents are correct, you dare not refuse that person because that's a violation of ECOWAS protocol. At that point in time, at the entry point, it might be difficult for you to be able to verify whether this person is an economic migrant or this person, it's going on the backway syndrome that we call it. So this is also a challenge for us. Now, coming back to what I said, it boils down to the issue of having a very good, effective border management systems to be able to mitigate some of these things. Institutional capacity. That is also a challenge for us, and that's why, we are yearning to have more and more capacity building trainings, so that we can effectively deal with this situation. I want to stop here for now.
Great.
Until later.
Thank you so much. You have the opportunity. Thank you so much. We'll have the opportunity to hear you complement these initial thoughts. We want to go to our next panelist. And mon ami, Monsieur Dao, c'est à vous maintenant de partager avec nous quelles réflexions vous avez au niveau de notre sujet de ce matin.
Merci bien.
Oui, oui.
Merci, cher invité, le modérateur, merci à vous. Je prends la parole pour parler au nom du directeur de la surveillance du territoire qui, en principe, devait être là et qui est empêché pour une autre mission. Donc, on vient de tout dire hier et aujourd'hui à propos des causes de la migration irrégulière, cela s'entend. Ce sur quoi je vais m'appesantir, c'est plutôt les deux formes d'immigration irrégulière. Chez nous, en Côte d'Ivoire, au vu de la crise qui s'est passée en Tunisie tout récemment, tout le monde a dû voir ça dans le monde entier, où des charters ont été faits par les pays en provenance desquels les immigrés qui avaient été refoulés ou maltraités au niveau de la Tunisie. Chaque pays a dû affréter des charters pour aller chercher ses ressortissants. Donc, au vu de cette forme-là, au niveau de la Côte d'Ivoire, et bien avant que cela n'arrive, on avait déjà, le président de la République avait déjà décrété une mesure, notamment l'année 2023 comme l'année de la jeunesse. Parce que nous avons pu constater que ceux qui partent de la Côte d'Ivoire étaient quand même d'une quantité importante. Et comment il fallait faire pour lutter contre cette migration? Le président de la République a décrété l'année 2023 comme l'année de la jeunesse. Et par conséquent, des projets ont été initiés à l'endroit des jeunes pour qu'ils puissent rester plus tôt dans le pays. Je vais vous en rémunérer quelques-uns. En effet, durant cette même année, il y a eu un déblocage de près de 10 milliards de francs CFA pour agir pour les jeunes. C'est le programme qui s'appelle Agir pour les jeunes. Donc tous les jeunes qui étaient en quête d'emploi et qui remplissaient les conditions pour être éligibles à ces projets ont été pris. Et dans ce cadre, plus de 18 000 jeunes ont été recensés et qui ont pu avoir des postes. On a eu un projet qu'on appelle PJ-Gouv. Le PJ-Gouv, c'est un projet du gouvernement. Un montant de près de 1118 milliards ont été affectés également à des jeunes qui avaient des projets de formation, d'insertion professionnelle, d'entrepreneuriat et d'autres. Mais avant tous ces projets, la Côte d'Ivoire, avec sa direction, a quand même mis les méthodes régulières, les méthodes classiques au niveau de ses frontières. Dans la gestion des frontières, cela s'entend. C'est ainsi qu'au niveau de l'aéroport, c'est-à-dire la frontière aérienne, nous, au vu de ce qui s'est passé dans les pays de l'autre côté, nous avons mis un système automatique et systématique de sorte que si tu veux partir immigrer et que tu ne dis pas réellement les motifs de ton départ, tu es débarqué directement à l'aéroport. Ça, c'est au niveau des jeunes qui veulent tenter l'immigration. On a pu constater ces derniers temps qu'il y avait une nouvelle qui parlait de près de combien d'Ivoiriens qui avaient débarqué en Italie. Là aussi, une mission a été diligentée pour aller constater les faits. Et on a pu voir que ce n'était vraiment pas le nombre indiqué. Donc, l'un dans l'autre, la politique que nous menons, c'est d'agir en amont, d'être proactif. La proactivité voudrait qu'on empêche déjà que les jeunes quittent le pays. Ça, c'est au niveau interne. Au niveau externe, au niveau des frontières terrestres et choses, les postes des frontières ont été construits. Et nous travaillons en collaboration avec les pays frontaliers, de sorte à gérer et juguler le volet terrorisme et autres. Notre frontière nord est beaucoup sollicitée ces derniers temps avec la crise que nous connaissons dans nos pays, nos voisins du nord. Et on a donc mis l'accent sur ces frontières là-bas, de sorte à ce que tous ceux qui fuient pour leur liberté puissent rentrer. Mais ceux qui portent des armes et autres qui sont suspects, en tout cas sont interpellés et interrogés. Des enquêtes sont menées pour savoir l'objet de leur entrée en Côte d'Ivoire. Au niveau du port également, c'est la même chose. Les navires qui débarquent, le commissariat spécial du port est chargé de régulariser tous ceux qui veulent descendre du bateau ou ceux de ne pas laisser descendre qui que ce soit du bateau. Donc, de façon générale, nous pensons que pour réussir cette mission que ce sujet, il faut aussi faire beaucoup de sensibilisation. Beaucoup de sensibilisation, car les réseaux sociaux nous dévancent sur la pratique, ou bien dans la pratique. Nous, les quelques-uns qui arrivent à traverser la Méditerranée se retrouvent au pied de la Tour Eiffel, envoient des photos aux uns et aux autres, font chanter les jeunes et qui se lancent tout de suite contre vents et marées dans l'aventure. Donc la meilleure politique pour nous en Côte d'Ivoire, c'est de vraiment travailler en amont sur ces aspects-là. Je vous remercie.
Merci. Mais s'il vous plaît, avant de vous quitter, yeah, thank you so much. Let's applaud. Les jeunes qui cherchent à partir, ils informent qui exactement en termes des autorités qui doivent donner la permission?
Mais puisque c'est une immigration irrégulière, donc personne n'est informé, encore moins leurs parents. Les parents ne sont même pas informés. C'est quand ils arrivent, ils appellent pour dire « je suis ici ». Mais ceux qui meurent à la traversée, on nous envoie les dossiers. Donc c'est alarmant. Moi je pense que de façon collégiale, les pays, en tout cas africains, devaient avoir une politique pour nos chefs d'État l'ont dit hier, de faire en sorte qu'on soit mieux chez nous.
Très bien, on va revenir. Hein?
Okay,
merci beaucoup.
D'accord.
My good friend, it is now your turn. You are in the United Nations system. Please, Bernard, help us from your perspective to complement this conversation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, whom I've personally known for a number of years and worked with. I also wish to thank my fellow panelists here. Your Excellencies, for UNODC, it is a great honor for us to be here because this forum that has been set up to honor Kofi Annan is so dear to us because he personally saw to the setting up of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. So if we are here today to honor him, we are so glad to be here. The UNODC, as was inaugurated by His Excellency Kofi Annan, tasked the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime to deal with all uncivil society. So when we talk of uncivil, anything that falls foul of law, he termed it as uncivil, and that mandated UNODC to actually work hard to help state institutions to address. We were mandated to do so many things, and fighting of smuggling and trafficking happens to be one of them. We derive our mandate from several protocols and conventions, instruments. Key among them are the UN Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime and the three protocols on trafficking in persons and smuggling of migrants, as well as firearms. These are the protocols that are guiding our work as far as irregular migration issues are concerned. We also derive our mandate from the UN Convention Against Corruption, which is also one of the critical issues that we need to look at when we are talking about irregular migration, organized crime. What do people do to actually get some officials to respond to their request? So these are some of the conventions that have given UNODC the right to be here today to speak about some of these matters. Now, yesterday we heard a lot about migration. People are moving for greener pastures and all that. But once people are desirous of moving, there are other people who also want to take advantage of them. So that brings in the aspects where criminals come in to exploit people. When we talk about dealing with this in a transnational organized crime manner, this lends itself to some definitions where we can look at the UN Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, where these very specific terms are defined. Criminal organized group. Who are these groups? People who come together to do certain things against state laws for their personal benefit. It's involving two or more people who meet for such purposes. It also transcends borders. So they plan something here and then try to end it in another country. When we're talking about these two main elements, the transnational organized nature and then the criminal organized groups, we then can talk about two examples of these transnational organized crimes, which is trafficking in person and smuggling of migrants. My earlier speakers, who are the experts on the field, have actually dealt with it appropriately. And I find myself very privileged to sit with experts on the field who know the ins and outs. I'm coming from the UN just to make sure that conventions that state parties have acceded to, we put it into practice to make sure that this topic that we are dealing with today, we wouldn't have problems coming out of it. The key issue here is how to address them. Now we are looking at trafficking in person. What is trafficking? Oftentimes there is a confusion between trafficking in persons and smuggling of migrants. But then the UN Convention, which we commonly call Palermo Convention, or the UNTOC, has demonstrated the distinction between the two crimes. For trafficking, somebody is trying to exploit somebody, either through internally or across borders. The essence of this is to exploit the person, continuous exploitation. Smuggling, it's somebody trying to facilitate a travel beyond border for the person's personal profits. Now, for trafficking, it is either domestic or beyond borders, but for smuggling, it is always across borders. Because people try to put all manner of documents together, try to outwit law enforcement agencies, try to also influence law enforcement officials and all that. So these are some of the differences that come between these two organized crimes. They are actually planned by two or more people. But there is also an instance where somebody agrees with somebody. There is consent in smuggling. Somebody agrees that, oh, take me to Italy and I pay such an amount. But on the way, it can also degenerate into trafficking, where I agree with you that I'm taking you to Italy. I've charged you $10,000. Note that this is an organized crime. I have my partners in, let's say, Niger. I take you to Niger, and I inform you that your money is finished. My friend here will give you a work to do so that we can continue your journey. Now, I hand you over to that, my friend over there, to exploit you, to use you to work, get more money before, that is, if the travel will continue. So that is where the blurred line is, where trafficking, smuggling, that starts as smuggling, can degenerate into trafficking. So beyond all these things, what are the measures that we are talking about? UNODC, in partnership with so many state parties to the convention, have tried as much as possible to help state institutions, state parties to promulgate laws that deal specifically with trafficking and smuggling. I know Mr. Lord Afrifa here, having had the opportunity to work with him for several years, was at the forefront when this convention was ratified. He led the process in ratifying this convention in Ghana as far back as 2012. And that led to the amendment of the Immigration Service Act, where smuggling was also criminalized. But our advocacy has been, let us have, once we have trafficking in persons, anti-trafficking law, let us have a complete law for smuggling as well, so that we know what we are talking about when we are dealing with the issues of smuggling. And as our lawyers will indicate, they will come out with the elements that will help them in prosecuting. So this is, and I'm also happy to listen to my colleague from Gambia. UNODC, through UNODC programs, we've also supported Gambia in this process of getting a smuggling law. We've also supported Mali, Senegal, and several countries. This is to ensure that the main convention guiding the fight against trafficking in persons and smuggling of migrants see the light of day. So these are some of the things that the UN is doing. And one critical thing in trying to address these issues, we've spoken about the push and pull factors. We know most of the things that push people to go. If African leaders, our continent leaders are making the continent so peaceful, stable for us, a lot of people would not want to move. So as part of our work, we also embark on advocacy, awareness creation, sensitization, that we know the challenges involved when you consent to the issue of being smuggled to another country. We've shown videos of people dying. But the sad thing is that there is so much pressure for people to move. So upon interviewing people who have survived serious issues, they tell you that if they die, they don't see what happens. But they will prefer to die than to stay, to go through all manner of pressures. So these are some of the things that we take up. No matter how hard it is, we continue to advocate that don't give yourself up for such things. And one major issue, based on our mandate from the UN Convention Against Corruption, is to also sensitize state parties, state institutions, and all that in our fight against corruption. On the fight against corruption in this instance, since our Nigerian brothers are here, I wish to commend the Oyo State of Nigeria, the police force there. There was social media video circulating where a tourist was using a bike to go, just a tourist who is exploring countries. And some police officers wanted to extort money from this person. Now, when it came out on the social media, the state police took a decisive decision by dismissing these officers who actually did that. So on that note, if we are just a tourist moving around and somebody trying to extort money, the police force in Oyo State, and by extension, the Nigerian government has dealt decisively with such a person. So if we are to deal with people who have corrupt intent, I think we'll go a long way in trying to resolve some of these things.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. You have all listened to the technocrats, and you have appreciated the dilemmas. I call them dilemmas because since yesterday, our leaders have raised the challenges, the gaps, and they are the operational people on the ground. They are equally talking about some of these challenges. What we notice is if we are able to address the root causes, some of which include poverty, the deprivation, people then, and here people meaning we in Africa should be able to travel to see the beauty of other countries, and automatically you would go for your visa and you would travel without being smuggled or trafficked. And then the awareness creation has come up again. And so beyond disrupting the criminal networks, our technocrats are also talking about sensitization. And so what I want now to do is, and we have still some, we are doing good on time management. I can see a hand already. We can take 3 questions and then they would address them. But in order to prepare them to respond, Dr. Chukwemeka, when we take the 3 questions, since I cut you off a bit, you would have the opportunity to look at any other remaining element that you do not add and equally address some of the issues coming. Then I will be also turning to my brother, Mr. Ofori, to address some of the issues coming. So I see a hand there. Oh, and then former Vice President of Liberia. I've had the opportunity to interact with her during some of the key dilemmas in Liberia. And she would look at me and say, Bumbandi, you seem to always talk about hope. I don't see the hope. Today, I'm sure she will say that a lot of hope has come. So please, you, and then afterwards, our former Vice President. Yes. Oh, this is my good professor. Okay. The light is shining on my face. Prof, forgive me. I do not identify you.
Well, I'm Professor Isaac Olali Albert. I'm from University of Ibadan in Nigeria. I think I want to throw some more, I want to throw some pebbles in the pool.
Yeah.
Listening to all of us, and this is the tradition across the African continent. When we're discussing migration, the focus is on people leaving Africa.
Okay.
But as I travel around the continent, I see a lot of white people, Indians, Chinese, rushing into Africa. I think there is a problem. And our analysis of the problem is not adequate, it's not proper. Now, what are the opportunities that these outsiders see that we cannot see? And I think it goes to the heart of the problem. Governance deficit, trust deficit. And I will give you a few examples. People come in here to take our mineral resources away, and that is why we are unemployed. That is why we are not growing. I received a report from Nigeria yesterday. 40 illegal oil wells. People come from different parts of the world to come and steal oil. Now, this is why we are unemployed. And this is why the young ones are running away. Now, in discussing migration, we need to discuss those being pushed out and those coming from outside to push them out. And I think that is when we have a balanced discourse.
Okay. Interesting. I'm sure this has been well noted. It's a contribution. It's not necessarily a question, but it has, in my view, provoked you to come forward with much more tangible responses. Yes, Your Excellency. Could we have a microphone for Her Excellency to...
Professor, thank you for giving me the opportunity. And like I said yesterday, I want us to look inside.
Yeah.
Because the issues are actually internal. And for me, there are 2 issues. When we talk about ECOWAS being now a community, not of states, but a community of people, my first question is, what can immigration, and I know you will go back and say maybe the laws are not created. There are many laws that have been signed under the ECOWAS protocols. What can we do to make it easy to move around?
Okay.
You come to Ghana, for example, and you need a telephone card. And they tell you have to get a Ghana card. And the Ghana card is only given to Ghanaians. So you have to go and find a Ghanaian who can get you a Ghana card instead of being able to go and get a Ghana card as a Iberian, but as a member of ECOWAS. So those are some of the internal things that we're talking about. Firstly, how can we make it easy? So if someone wants to come, because we now have open borders, there should be no issue. But if the border points are difficult to access and they make it difficult for people who want to do this regularly, then the smuggling will take place. The second issue is, how do we move around from one country to the next? Not just in ECOWAS, but across the continent, because we're saying now we should have open borders. To get from east to west is like pulling tooth. Immigration. Can we, I don't know if we have it, but I know there's Interpol that the Europeans use, and I'm hoping that we have our own system, an African system, that everybody can put their biometrics in. So if I want to go to South Africa, I just need that card that will say I'm not a criminal. I should get to the airport in Johannesburg. As vice president, I traveled to Johannesburg. I was stuck at the airport for 4 hours waiting for clearance. This is just 2 years ago. And I was like, wow, this is Africa. So I think, what can we do to stop some of these internal issues that you can get? You have easier access to Europe than you have across the continent. What can we do internally to solve some of these issues? Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. We'll have our third question. Yes. Okay. Madam, after him, you can still come in before we get the responses.
Thank you, moderator. My name is Samuel Aglotti from the Center for Mixed Migrations and Diaspora Studies, University of Cape Coast. For us to get a solution that works, we need proper diagnosis of the factors that are leading to migration. But since yesterday till today, I've realized that we seem to conclude that the poor are the people who are migrating. And there are very current studies that try to have a direct relationship between development and migration. From where I stand, looking at the amount of money that is involved in traveling outside one's country, I'm imagining why those we consider poor can be able to organize such an amount of money and travel. Okay. This is where we need to revisit the way we analyze our factors of migration, so that we can get policies that are working. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My good sister. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much,
Okay.
Mr. Bombande. So my question is, having heard yesterday, and I think it's being said also in the news, that 3 ECOWAS member states are going to pull out. So I would like to know how the status of the citizens of those countries are going to be regulated or sorted out, because I am afraid that if the countries are pulling out, their citizens are already in other ECOWAS countries. So what is going to happen, and how are we going to sort this out? Because I'm afraid it will result in trafficking in, papers for maybe these nationals rushing to have documents of the countries that are still in the ECOWAS. Are there preventive measures, or are there measures that are being put in place to sort this out? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure our technocrats, you have taken note of this further question. But I cannot turn to you and not allow our former Vice President, Her Excellency, Madam Tambajan, to make her point. And then you would have the opportunity to respond. Could we have a microphone for Her Excellency? Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Generator. Moderator, you're very engaging.
Thank you.
You've set the space. I thank the panelists, and I also want to acknowledge my Director General of Immigration. We talk about leadership, and we are looking at the intergenerational growth among young people. He's very dynamic. He's a very good ethical leadership. Not because it's not a quick proco. He has spoken, acknowledged me, and I'm acknowledging him. But this is the truth of the matter. The Immigration Service had a lot of challenges in the past, particularly when it was politicized for 22 years. But now we are seeing a new outlook under the leadership of a young person. So thank you so much, Sidi Toure. My question is, or my contribution would be, we need to look at what my son just said about the migration of other nationals. We all know them. They come, they take our resources, they go. What are the measures that our governments are adopting to ensure that they minimize? You never can cope, but at least you can minimize. What are they doing like that? In the three, like in Niger, how can you explain Niger being in darkness when the uranium is lighting the Western world? These are some of the fundamental issues that we need to look at. And that's why you have the issue of corruption and the issue of closing an eye to things like that. Then I'm also looking at the gender-based violence, because he rightly said, gave the responses that the national, at the national level, the perspective that we have. They have institutionalized mechanisms and systems to mitigate the migration, but at the same time, fundamentally looking into the issue of human rights. Women who are facing gender-based violence cross-border, because most of the cross-border are women, what do they do with those women? There must be some sort of like legal issues or legal measures to ensure that they protect those women and youth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is very rich. Before we turn to you, I wish that some of the issues that came from the audience was already raised yesterday for leadership and the policymakers. But keep in mind that leadership that makes decision relies on their technocrats. So the linkage is there and very clear. If I refer, for example, to Madam, former Vice President of Liberia, why can't we in ECOWAS have free roaming? I know just last week, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire have agreed to have free roaming. Why should you come to Ghana and want to remove your chip and buy a Ghana chip, when with the chip that you came with, you can continue to have your communication intact until you go back? But these are decisions that we can make. So is it that you, the technocrats, do not put forward in very real terms the challenges for decision making to be taken, or is it the decision makers who refuse to take your advice? So let the conversation be between you and the decision makers. Is it you who is the problem, or is it the leadership who is the problem? Well, they would answer, but let's give let's ask Dr. Chukwemeka to start. And it's not often that you have this opportunity to be frank. Now, when you land in Lagos tomorrow, people will receive you. You will not be quoted. It's Chatham House rules. It must be on. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much, Your Excellencies. Please permit me, let me stand on the existing established protocol. I think this conversation is getting a lot more interesting. When you ask us, to talk straight and all that, I hope you are not looking for my job. Let's address very frantic issues.
Yeah.
My colleague and friend from the UNODC, he talked about the police officers who were collecting this or that, and all that in Nigeria from a tourist and all that. I just want to, address it a little. You see, when I say leaders are not doing enough, an immigration officer, for instance, in Europe, in America, and all that, cannot be tempted because he's paid well.
Okay.
So you find out that you need to really, really give these people a living wage.
Okay.
For instance, my officers who are at the borders, the person could compromise just because of a very little thing. because he doesn't have the next meal on the table. So back home, I have submitted to government what I call the way forward for border management in Nigeria. You are aware that there are a whole lot of ungoverned spaces in Nigeria, particularly the Chad-Niger corridor and all that. And with the pulling out of, the French forces out of Niger and all that, we are having a lot of pressures at that border. So we are talking about, just like my Controller General in Gambia talked about, we're talking about using geospatial technology, trying to do e-fencing, trying to do e-walling, and all that. But the point is, you bring up this bill or solutions and all that, they say the money is too much. But we know the money and the need. Border security is national security. Okay. So if we must get it right, we must, do appropriate border security. We must do more to motivate these officers. We must do more to do training. We must do more to ensure that we create congenial atmospheres within the country to enable our youths stay back. These are very critical. On the issue of, that we are leaving and others are coming in and all that, please, I would plead with you, let us stay focused. Let us stay focused, because we are talking about addressing migration and irregular irregular migration and transnational crime. Those other people that come, they come regularly. I'm talking to my brother and friend, Professor, right there. If they are coming, if a Chinese is coming to your country, he's coming in regularly. If a European is coming to your country, he's coming in regularly. But we, by the time we go, due to our backdrop and all that, we live like, some of my colleagues have said here, that even when you try to stop them, they live from, some of the unauthorized routes.
But Dr. Chukwemeka,
yes, sir.
The Prof was addressing a fundamental root cause. Yesterday, one of the issues was diminishing resources and livelihoods. And now I understand it even includes you because you are not adequately remunerated. His point is, there is so much resources that others are coming in and taking. How come that we are talking about diminishing resources in a continent that others see abundance of resources? I think that's the point he was making.
That's my first initial comment was that, look, maybe, forgive me, our leaders have done well, but they have not done enough.
Okay. I hear you.
Because we would have ordinarily, when I say create congenial atmosphere for these people to stay. I came back from Saudi Arabia, 10 days ago. If you go to Saudi Arabia, it's an arid country. But leadership has changed it. Okay. Dubai is an arid country. But leadership has changed it. And yesterday, when the moderators, our commentators, in their opening speech, they say Africa with a lot of hopes, with a lot of mineral resources, with a lot of this. The commentary was wonderful. It shocked me. But that in spite of all this, we are running in. We have all these things. We have the mineral resources. We have the human resources. We have whatever it takes. We have good weather. If you go to Saudi Arabia, if you stay there, your skin will be peeling. Mm-hmm. But so we still go there and live this very fine atmosphere because we are looking for money. Because our leaders may not have done enough. Otherwise, we won't be living. They should be coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I want to turn to Mr. Kwame Tichi. Mr. Samuel complimented you for your good work. Oh, wait a minute. I know what happened. I left the updated for a minute. Yeah, Mr. Ofori Afrifa. you have been, okay, I'm sure it is, whether it is you or the one you report to, you have been complimented in terms of the convention. You take the credit. Wonderful. But the issue is implementation, which came up yesterday, institutional weakness. So can you respond based on the questions and address this issue here?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yes, it looks like we are being invited into another realm.
Mm-hmm.
I prepared to come and tackle transnational organized crime,
Mm-hmm.
but we are being moved into other policy areas.
Mm-hmm.
And I would beg that there are issues that we have to discuss
Mm-hmm.
on the transnational organized crime
Mm-hmm.
and irregular migration. So we would beg to do more on that side, and then later we'll respond to some of these issues that they have raised.
But would you say they are not interrelated?
They are. We will link them.
Okay.
We will link them up. When I finished my submission, I talked about now coming back to the specifics of transnational organized crime, which also affects some of our economies and our people. I'm happy my brother from Nigeria is here. There are things that we are seeing that we must address. When we're talking about transnational organized crime, let's talk about migrant smuggling, which UNODC has addressed, human trafficking, the header. Now we talk about terrorism, money laundering, cyber fraud, and the upcoming QNet issues.
Mm-hmm.
Money laundering, for example, through irregular migration. When we intercept somebody coming from, for example, northern Nigeria with 450 ATM cards coming to Ghana to take money from our ATM systems and moving it back, this is a huge issue for the economies of both Nigeria and Ghana. 450. And then we talk about our dollar depreciating and being scarce on the market. These are serious issues for the economies of our countries. Now, just give the example also of cyber fraud. Cyber fraud in Ghana is on the rise. And again, our brothers from Nigeria are at the center of it. The trend that we are seeing is that they used to be doing it. You go to a whole apartment and they've set up a whole internet cafe of about 100 computers with about 100 young men, 50 young men working. Now what we are seeing that it's moved beyond to trafficking, because now we are seeing them abusing the children. As we speak now, we have two groups that we are dealing with. Now they are being tortured and being beaten because they are not doing enough for their masters. These are some of the issues that I'm trying to say that importantly for us at this forum, we have to discuss us. Yes, and from the Gambia and Sierra Leone.
Okay.
We are seeing huge movement of young girls moving through our country to the Arab countries. Trafficking, abused, and they come back. We have to deal with these issues. So a lot of things have been done. Institutional measures have been taken. We all have spoken about the porous borders of our countries, which encourage irregular migration. For us in Ghana, we have set up a second layer of border checks, what we call internal or inland checkpoints, in the proximate areas to the borders. These are interceptions where those who were missed at the regular entry points are intercepted. And some of them in Asia will say that we intercepted 3 persons who were linked to terrorist groups who had been shot and were moving into Ghana for treatment.
Okay.
Yes, it became a huge issue.
I would like us to go to
Yes.
Cote d'Ivoire, and then we'll hear from Gambia,
Very well.
and our UN colleague will be last. But before, I want to transition from you to Cote d'Ivoire. In Cote d'Ivoire, they talk about a border management system. Or maybe I should frame it. The people you have missed. Imagine at Kotoka International Airport, there is a young girl of about 15 years. She's traveling alone, and you can see she's intimidated even by the environment. You missed that she is being trafficked. But is it possible that with the example of Cote d'Ivoire, at Kotuka, you can stop that girl from boarding the flight? Not because you are preventing her from traveling, but you are preventing her from being smuggled.
Yes, we have a similar system in place. In fact, Ghana some years ago put in place a policy that there's a ban placed on young girls being recruited to the Middle and the Far East. That is a similar thing that you're speaking about. When you profile them, like we said, people coming from Gambia, like Cote d'Ivoire or Sierra Leone, being moved through Ghana. The profiling alone will tell you that this girl is being trafficked or is being smuggled. And we stop them.
You stop them?
Yes.
OK. Mon ami, vous avez bien écouté. S'il vous plaît, ajoutez les éléments que vous voulez ajouter et répondre également aux questions qui étaient élevées. Micro, s'il vous plaît, micro.
J'ai dit au niveau de l'aéroport Félix Houphouët-Boigny, nous faisons du profilage. La destination Tunisie et Maroc
such that Côte d'Ivoire, Morocco, and Tunisia looks like we would not need visas to go to those countries, and so all of the population of the sub-region are presently transiting through Abidjan and go to Morocco to go to Tunisia. And what we're doing is that we do profiling. And so when you come to a country, we'll ask you where you're going to. And then when you say you're going to Morocco, we ask who are you going to visit in Morocco. We'll ask for the phone number of the person you're going to see. We'll ask you how much money you have on you. Is that going to make it possible for you to live there? If you are not able to get a positive answer to these questions, we'll have to send you back. And now let's come back to the issue that General spoke about. Those are certainly challenges because the policy makers, they are the policy makers, but we are the implementing agencies. Because when the policy makers look at some of these challenges, it is not we who are at the operationalization level who take the decisions. So it is the decision makers and the policy makers at the level of the heads of state in terms of the management of people coming from the different countries. And so the welcoming countries as well, the welcoming countries certainly need to take a lot of decisions about that. So it would not be appropriate for me to respond to that question because we are the operationalization level. Now, in terms of VPG at the level of the airport, of the borders, we, in the building of the border controls with all the materials that we have, and we've put in place CCTV cameras and things like that to see what all of the other officers are doing at the level of the border. And that camera makes it possible for us to be able to see what the security people are doing in connection with women, as well as what are we doing to minors and things like that. So some amount of things are being done to prevent SGVB. And so that we can prevent sexual and gender-based violence. And so basically that's what we're doing at the level of Côte d'Ivoire. And I've said it and I would say it again, that we would need to stay within the subject matter. And the subject matter is fighting against irregular migration and the management of it. And so generally it is our young people who are leaving our countries, and we think that it is some of us think it's just poor people who are leaving. No, we've realized it's not poor people. We've had people who are teachers, university lecturers, nurses who have decided to leave our countries. So it is not only just very young people only who are moving out. No, and we need to look at all of those specifics. Thanks.
In response to the questions that were raised, and keeping in mind there is a link, I want to remind you, you cannot kick the ball only to the decision makers. So keep that in mind.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I first want to comment on what Professor said regarding the surge of Asians and Europeans, into African countries. Prof, be rest assured, most often they do meet all entry requirements to enter our respective countries. Where lies the problem is how to regulate them when they are already in the country. And here I want to give an example of my own country, the Gambia. The expatriate quota secretariat is run by Gambia Immigration Department. And this is the body charged with the responsibility of regulating all expatriates. Even if they open their own businesses legally, the laws does not permit them to employ certain number of their nationals or non-Gambians. And in fact, key positions, goes to Gambian nationals. So this is also a way of trying to regulate, their activities in the country. They can't employ more than 3 persons. The rest of the employees must have to be Gambian. And periodically, the Secretariat also has representative from Ministry of Labor and Employment. It also have, Gambia Revenue Authority, that's the GRA Customs, to be part of it. So when they are doing their spontaneous checks, they do check on some of these things. And it's really paying dividend. Having said that, I want to move on to what Madam Vice President, former Vice President of Liberia, mentioned about the free movement of persons within the ECOWAS space. Madam, I have spent 8 years in Liberia in charge of immigration reforms under the auspices of the United Nations. But I am in total agreement with what you have said. When you mentioned this, I searched in my wallet and pulled my own national identity card. This identity card is reading ECOWAS biometric ID card. Now, this ECOWAS biometric ID card, under normal circumstances, I should be able to use this in all 15 member states to travel there, even through the international airport. But then, we roll out this ID card issuance on the 1st of October 2018. It took us 18 months before we can get the validation from ECOWAS. So the problem is not only about countries or institutions. If it is not validated by ECOWAS, other member state countries would not be able to recognize this, because if ECOWAS does the validation, that information is shared with everybody. But again, also, it comes down to the issue of our national laws superseding our sub-regional and regional laws. Because if the laws of a sovereign nation recognize entry requirements to be a passport or other valid travel document, but not a national identity card, that means that individual or traveler may not be able to use it to travel to each of the member state countries. But again, I can't disagree with Madam Vice President. We need to step ahead of this game by way of having one unique document, which should be recognized by ECOWAS, and every member state of ECOWAS should be able to use this. Thank you very much, sir.
No, thank you so much. I hope that this is a very important, concrete recommendation that you carry forward with decision making, so that we avoid a situation of collective ID cards, but in our various countries not being respected by the others. Thank you for bringing something very concrete. Bernard, I want you to wrap it up try to be as brief as possible, because you, the technocrats, are so important that there is an online question from somebody somewhere that we will ask to be read, and then you respond to that and we conclude. So, Bernard, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I think from the UN perspective, we've worked with state parties to come up with all manner of protocols, conventions, and all that. And like my colleague from Gambia just said, it's the national laws. So if we sign on to protocols or conventions, even ratify in our country, domesticate it, but we don't implement them, the challenges will be there. Mm-hmm. On free movement, ECOWAS protocol on free movement is there. We've also committed to ourselves with this United Nations compact on migration for safe and orderly movement and all that. We are saying to ourselves, these are the things that we are going to do to ensure safe movement and all that. But when it comes home to the implementation of these things, it becomes a very difficult issue. Her Excellency pointed out the frustration. As high as the Vice President of the Republic can't move within the region. Mm-hmm. But we have committed to. We've said that the protocols are there, the compacts are there. So all that we do is to embark on our advocacy, to sensitize and continue the capacity enhancement for our officials to ensure that all these things, as we personally put impediments in our ways, are removed. When you talk about this movement of people coming from elsewhere to our continent, what do we do as nationals to address some of these issues? If you want to delve into that area, like Mr. FIFA indicated that it is going to take us off gear. In Ghana, we've noticed a lot of galamsey issues and all that being spearheaded by migrants. What do we do as a nation? Leadership is there, law enforcement officials are there, the laws are there. You've assented to conventions, you've ratified them and all that. What are we doing? So all that we can say is that we encourage you to ratify these international conventions. When you do so, please implement the laws. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We want to have, yes, the question that is online. Who is going to read it for us? Yeah, microphone. Now, not all of you can respond, so one of you should respond to the question, but you can choose who would be in a better place, please.
Hello. So this question is from Mr. Eric Piazza. He says that the issue of combating trafficking in the sub-region is as a result of lack of cooperation between countries within the sub-region. How can we as a region work effectively together to combat these issues?
How can we work together to combat
these issues of trafficking?
Okay, so it's a question that has in a way been addressed, but would any of you elect to respond? Dr. Chukwemeka, see. If you can do it snappy, maybe my brother Afifa can add.
I think the question the lady there is asking, how can we do it together?
Yeah.
Now, the ECOWAS protocol is a platform.
Yeah.
We are also suggesting that we should have a legal framework between neighbors, which my colleagues, have also said here. Because people living within the contiguous zones, you discover that sometimes there are relations and all that. But because of the imaginary balkanization of Africa and things like that, I may be from the same community, and there is a boundary here. So we have legal frameworks, and our leaders actually have ECOWAS have provided, this free movement protocol of persons and goods and all that. The AU is also encouraging that. I feel that we are developing a policy in Nigeria on reciprocity, because Madam the Vice President talked about going to South Africa and staying for 4 hours, at the airport. If you talk about Egypt, Nigerians going to Egypt now is a challenge. So we're trying to develop a visa policy that will be treated purely based on reciprocity. But we will agree on within us, a meeting of this kind of technocrats like this is also, I advise, could be, regular, so that we will advise leaderships and, the authorities on how to go about this. I want to make one last comment. When we are talking about regular and irregular migration, our European counterparts, the developed countries, you discover that most of Africans go there to school. You finish schooling, the very first, you have traveled to that place, regularly, according to the regular migration, rules and regulations. Now, by the time you finish education, within 2-3 months, they have deported your black ass to your nation. Now, it will be if it is possible, can they make a framework so that somebody who has finished, his university, after spending a lot of money, will be allowed to look for a job at least for 1 year and all that. And if he stays there for 1 year and all that, if he does not get a job or things like that, the person could be asked to come back or something like that. But not immediately after finishing, after graduation, they ask you to leave. Okay. So this could also be considered, as part of regular migration. Thank you so much.
Thank you. On behalf of the whole group, I want to withdraw. I wouldn't repeat it. Some comment. Yeah. Did you want to?
Yes, Mr. Moderator. I think that tackling this issue of transnational organized crime and some of the issues or the questions that some of our excellencies raised about how can people move around freely, etc., etc. The issue in the sub-region, I'll say, is about cooperation, international cooperation. How do we, as the ECOWAS states, speak to each other? Look, as I sit here, I don't speak to my brother from Nigeria. We will only speak when at like a forum like this. At the bilateral level, we are not talking. I'm not talking to Gambia. La Côte d'Ivoire spoke about intercepting people or criminals. I have no way of knowing the person he has stopped, like the girl being smuggled. We are not linked. We have no common platform of information exchange.
Very concrete.
Yes.
So we want to take note of this as one of our recommendations. But we are running out of time and we want to wrap up. But my sister, who is our ECOWAS representative to Liberia, wants to make a comment before we close this session. Yeah, my good sister, please.
Good morning, Excellencies. Good morning, dear distinguished audience. I don't work in the Department for Free Movement, but just to perhaps throw a little bit of clarity on the ECOWAS card. So the ECOWAS card has various features on it. And I think depending on each country, the kind of infrastructure that you have to support those features, you are then, you then develop your card. What I suspect is that maybe there are some gaps on the card, and that makes it sometimes difficult for speedy validation. But then again, we should also understand that the ECOWAS card, for instance, the long-term vision is for one card to be able to do anything everywhere as your unique identity across all of the member states. Unfortunately, as member states, many of us have not, taken those steps, and that in itself limits the efficacy and efficiency of the card in also promoting that freedom of movement, freedom for Excellency to come to Ghana and be able to get a card and use it. And then, of course, when you talk about the issue about why don't we have free roaming, again, ECOWAS has established protocols that should allow us to do that. But it's up to the member states to begin to implement those, strategies and those frameworks in their countries. And all of us are not on the same level of development. So whilst we have all of the treaties, all of the protocols, many legal texts, and I think it was said yesterday that ECOWAS has many important legal texts, perhaps more than many other regional blocs. But our problem has always been implementation because of the various stages of development. So it's one of the roles that the resident representatives play in the different countries that they are posted to push the member states, encourage them, and work with with Abuja in ensuring that we are able to come to that same, to a certain standard where our protocols can work amongst us. So it's work in progress, and one of the things we should do, like he says, talking to each other, which we are not doing. For instance, I want to find out how many of the immigration services here are on the West African Police Information Systems, WAPIS. Some are, but WAPIS has been a work in progress for a long time. And one of the key objectives of the work of WAPIS is to ensure that we're able to curtail what you call a transnational crime. We're able to have a certain database that we all can plug into and track crime and criminals as they move around. We are only as strong as our weakest link. And again, it's up to sometimes our technocrats also pushing even harder to the policymakers to make those critical decisions that are necessary for the texts and the protocols and the treaties to work.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the clarification. Who am I to refuse a former vice president from? Yeah. Yeah.
Drug trafficking across our region.
Yeah.
Push and all of these other things that are destroying our children. I know we're talking about addressing conflict, and I know the issue of drugs across our region is so important, and no one has mentioned what immigration is doing to even stop some of the drugs coming into our region, if you have the time. Thank you.
Snappy, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Thank you very much. I just want to qualify what Mr. Afrifa just mentioned.
Yeah.
And it will be very important for this gathering to help us have this. We are not talking to each other as heads of immigration in West Africa. This is very, very important. Last year we were here under the free movement. Mr. Boateng was the commissioner. Yes. We were here at the same Labado Beach Hotel. And majority of immigration heads from West Africa were in attendance. It was discussed and agreed as a resolution that we need to have a common platform where we will be talking to each other. I am talking to the Controller General of Ghana Immigration, Mr. Taki, and I do talk with the Controller General of Nigeria Immigration also. But besides few, I'm not talking with others. And this is not helping us. It is not, sincerely speaking. So I think, these gatherings will help us have this. Talking about the national identity card, the ECOWAS identity card, I'm sorry to say this, the reason why it took us 18 months to have the validation is because your equipment in Abuja was malfunctioning. That was the reason. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And there was the drug-related, very important issue that came at the end. You've taken note. I'm sure we do not want to extend the conversation, but we have to include it in our records about what we must do. And I'm looking at our MCs to pass it over to them. But, sometimes initiatives must begin with us. Before we leave Accra, we can have our WhatsApp group of immigration heads. That is your initiative in order to be able to talk with one another. And it's a new form of communication that is easy and that is helpful, and you'll be amazed what can happen as the formal systems, as our sister ECOWAS representative has just been talking about. And if I were to add my own comment, she was the head of our National Commission for Civic Education, very respected for her professionalism, and I'm not surprised that it is for us to be able to continue to move in this direction that makes all the difference. So I'm now looking at our Masters of Ceremonies so that we end this session.
Brilliant, inspiring conversation there. Shall we give them a round of applause?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, our moderator, Mr. Emmanuel Habuka Bombandi, and our panelists, Dr. Chukwu Emeka Dike, Mr. Sidi Toure, Mr. Soridio Dow, and our UNODC rep, Mr. Bernard Asama. Thank you all very much. Mr. Frifa, shall we put our hands together for them? And lovely contributions coming in as well. And now we would like to invite our commandant.
So we've got some presents to give to our panelists. Mr. Bombande, will you help us give the presents to your panelists, please?
Yes, happy to do that.
So I'd like to invite Mr. Ofori Efrifa, Deputy Controller General Operations and Command, Ghana Immigration Service. Oh, that one's always nicer when the women do it. When we put it around the men's necks, it's always nicer when the women do it. Emma, you should do it. Ah. This is the KAPS. You see what I mean? Well done, Mr. Bombande. And then we move on to Dr. Chukwuemeka, MDK, Acting Deputy Controller General, Border Management, Nigeria Immigration Service. And next we have Mr. CDM Toure, Director General, Gambia Immigration Department. Next we have Mr. Siridio Dow, Police Principal Commissioner and Deputy Director of Air and Border Police, Ministry of the Interior and Security Directorate of Territorial Surveillance, Côte d'Ivoire. And now on to Mr. Bernard Asamoah, OIC, National Program Coordinator, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, Ghana. Thank you very much. And now for our moderator, we would like to invite the Assistant Commandant, the Deputy Commandant. Thank you, Deputy Commandant. Thank you, our moderator. Thank you, our panelists. Thank you all very much. Addressing irregular migration and transnational organized crimes. We're going to take a little break, and when we return, we will have our breakout sessions. So from here, we will be breaking out. We've got 1A, or is it 1B? 1A is Gender, Youth and Migration, Issues and Debates, and that's in the Multipurpose Training Facility. Breakout session 1B, Building Community Resilience Against Climate Change and Conflicts. That will be Conference Room 1. And then session 1C, Climate Change and Migration in West Africa, Assessing Opportunities and Pitfalls. That will be Schroeder Hall, Main Auditorium. Breakout session 1D, Demography and Migration in a Multipolar World Order, and that will be Conference Room 2. I'd like to go over very quickly. Breakout session 1A, Gender, Youth and Migration, Issues and Debates. That's Multipurpose Training Facility. Session 1B, Building Community Resilience Against Climate Change and Conflict. That's Conference Room 1. Climate Change and Migration in West Africa, Assessing Opportunities and Pitfalls. That's Schroeder Hall, Main Auditorium. So that will be in here. Breakout Session 1D, Demography and Migration in a Multipolar World Order. And that's Conference Room 2. Distinguished invited guests, I'd like to acknowledge our virtual participants. And if you would like to join us via social media, our handles are...
So after the break, you go straight into your various breakout sessions. We are not coming back here together as a group till after lunch, where we have the last closing ceremony. So the KAPS coordinator says to whip your appetite. To whet your appetite, we should mention the names of those that are going to be on the various panels so that you know where to go. For this first breakout panel, which is on gender, youth, and migration, those on the panel are Honorable Dr. Zenato Ajiman-Rawlings, the Member of Parliament for the Korle Klote Constituency, Greater Accra Region. I see her in the house. Honorable, you are welcome. And then we have Madam Patience Ajari Kwabi, the Director, Women, Youth, Peace and Security Institute here at KIPTC. We also have Dr. Christian Ani, the Senior Research and Project Coordinator in NACS program with the Institute for Security Studies. We also have Ms. Aisa Tufau, Gender, Conflict, Peace and Security Expert, International Consultant for Gen Peace International Consulting. And then for that particular session, we have the moderator as Dr. Linda Dakwa, who is a Senior Research Fellow at the Legon Center for International Affairs and Diplomacy, University of Ghana. For session 1B, which is on building community resilience against climate change and conflict, we have Professor Abubakar Ndiaye, who is a professor of Pan-African Studies and Political Science at the College of Worcester, Ohio. And then we have Professor Ibrahim Bangura, a senior lecturer at the University of Sierra Leone. We also have Professor Samuel Agloti, a senior lecturer at the Center for Mixed Migration and Diaspora Studies at the Department of Population and Health, University of Cape Coast. We also have Professor Daniel Dominic Danjibo, a senior research fellow of the Peace and Conflict Studies program at the Institute for Peace and Strategic Studies, University of Ibadan. The session will be moderated by Dr. Anna Mensah, who is a senior lecturer at the Kofi Annan Peacekeeping Training Center. For the third panel, which is on climate change and migration in West Africa, assessing opportunities and pitfalls, we have on the panel Dr. Naila Salihu, a senior lecturer at the Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research, KIPTC. We have Professor Efem Ubi, a director of research at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. We have Colonel Dr. Atahar Maiga, the head of training component, Center for Analysis and Research of the Sahelian area, Modibo Goita, at the École de Maintien de la Paix, Aliou Blondin Bay. Then we also have Dr. Yao Ajimambuafo, who is a senior research fellow at the Center for Climate Change and Sustainability Studies, College of Basic and Applied Sciences at the University of Ghana. That session is moderated by Dr. Danjuma Aku, a program officer at the Department of Political Affairs, Peace and Security, ECOWAS Commission. The final session is on demography and migration in a multipolar world order. The panelists are Professor Kwesi Enin, a consultant at the KIPTC. We have Professor Isaac Olawale Albert, Professor of African History, Peace and Conflict Studies at the University of Ibadan. We have Dr. Margaret Munyani, a senior researcher, special project at the Institute for Security Studies. And then we have Mr. Sebastian Brack, senior advisor, representative to the European Union with the Kofi Annan Foundation. That session is moderated by Mr. John Poku, the head of conflict management program at the KIPTC. So ladies and gentlemen, because we are not coming back here after the coffee break, Kindly follow the signs when Kofi is done. The ladies here will be holding the signs throughout. So for those that are coming here to the conference room at Schrader Hall, this is where it is. But for those that are going to the MPTF Conference Room 1, Conference Room 2, please do follow the signs. There will be adequate signs that will lead you to that session. Lunch is expected to be at 12:30, but I think for the moderators, if you aim for 1 o'clock, that would be good. Then we can have a full hour, hour and a half for lunch before we come back here at 2:30 for the final session.
So I'd like to go over again once more. Session 1A, Gender, Youth and Migration. That will be at the Multipurpose Training Facility. The Multipurpose Training Facility, that's for gender, youth and migration issues and debates. For building community resilience against climate change and conflicts, we have Conference Room 1, that's Session 1B, Building Community Resilience Against Climate Change and Conflicts, Conference Room 1. Climate change and migration in West Africa, assessing opportunities and pitfalls, that's in here, Schroeder Hall, the main auditorium, and that's Session 1C. For our final session, which is 1D, Demography and Migration in a Multipolar World Order, and that's Conference Room 2. Ladies and gentlemen, I think to make the most of these sessions, we must keep to time, so try and make your break a little short so you can enjoy the session more. The third edition of the Kofi Annan Peace and Security Forum is brought to you by the Norwegian government, the German government, and the government of Ghana. I think we can break at this point. Oh, they're still here, the panelists. Well, thank you, our panelists. Thank you, our moderator.
Yes. Thank you.
Let's give them
A round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Enjoy your breaks and enjoy the sessions thereafter.
Mr. Bombande, can we call back the last panelist? Mr. Bombande, could the panel come back for a group picture, please?
We need to take a group photo if the others are coming.
What are the list? Do you have that list, the paper? Mr. Lord Efrifa, Mr. Lord Efrifa, Dr. DK, Mr. Toure, Mr. Diao, and Mr. Bernard Asamoah. Can you come back for a group photo, please?
hours of fun. Don't know why I didn't come. I don't know why I didn't come. When I saw